Hi everyone, welcome to episode 84 of the ITSM Crowd. This is our first one for 2021. Normally, again, like in December, we'd have been doing a review of the year. Did our predictions come true? What do we think is going to happen? We normally kick off the year as well with a panel session to say, what do we think is going to happen? What are our plans going to be? And again, we looked at the way history's overtaking us and went, let's do something a little bit different. So one of the things that's kind of jumped out at me is the fact that we're all dealing with colossal amounts of change in our personal lives, in our professional lives, in the societies that we live in. So this just seemed like a perfect opportunity to bring in somebody who's an expert who can maybe help us with some coping strategies and some advice. So rather than try and think about what 2021 is going to bring to us, instead we're going to talk about whatever 2021 brings to us. How do we make sure that we are ready, we can cope, and we know what we're doing? So we've got Karen Ferris with us, who is an organisational change management expert and all-round brilliant person. Karen, if you want to kick us off, please, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Certainly, thanks, Claire. Yeah, it's early in the morning here in Melbourne, Australia, hence the croaky throat, so my apologies. Yes, so as you know, my background, I started off in IT service management, and that's what actually got me to Australia back in 1998. And about 10, 11 years ago, one of the things we're going to talk about, I was an accidental author, and I was always interested in organisational change. It's always a passion, because the people side of everything that I did was really dear to me. And then I sort of got, because I wrote a book on organisational change for IT service management, and that sort of shifted me into that space, I suppose, in a formal way. And that's been, my passion ever since. I still work in the IT service management space. I'm still doing consultancy in that. And whatever you do in service management, you're probably changing or improving process or technology or roles, whatever, and it's all about change. So I think OCM is, a complementary skill set for anyone who's doing anything, because most of us are dealing with change in some way in what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So my name's Claire Agutter. I'm going to be the host for our session tonight for me, this morning for Karen. I can see we've got some people watching live already. We can take questions from you using the YouTube comments. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask Karen, anything that comes up specifically while we're broadcasting live, pop it into the YouTube comments. We'll bring it up onto the screen and we can answer that as well. So brilliant chance to ask an expert if you want to do so while we're on air. Now, my background is very much IT service management, and I was a change manager, spent a lot of time in the IT change management space. And there was always that little sort of glance out to OCM. If you're making an IT change, you should probably think about involving the organisational change management team as well. And I always went and looked for them and I never found them. It was always just a couple of lines. So, I mean, is this something that you think organisations do take seriously enough?
Not enough, no. And I think that's such a, if I go into an organisation and they could be doing like major change, not even small change, and I can say, where's your organisational change management competency? And they go, it's that person in the corner over there. And I'm like, there's your problem. Change can't be in the hands of one person. And that's what I think they've got wrong, is that OCM and the one or two people that might be doing that in an organisation have been tasked with transitioning people through every change that the organisation's undertaking, and there's no way they're going to do that. So what tends to happen is they end up being a resource on the major changes, and everything else is just left to cross our fingers and hope people like it, which often isn't the case. So one of the things I've been saying for a number of years now is those OCM professionals in the organisation need to stop doing and start strategizing about how they build a change competency across the whole organization. So go back to the whole idea of a change network, or a series of change agents, whatever you want to call them, change champions, which we've never really done well. We sort of said, oh yes, who wants to be a change champion? And people put their hand up and go, oh, that sounds interesting, not really knowing what was going to be expected of them. And we gave them a lanyard that said, I'm a change champion, and that's it. That's all they got. And it never got off the ground, you know. So we need to take a step back and say, we still need to do that, but we need to do it seriously. And we need to train those people and educate them and support them so they can help people in their areas, however you want to structure it, transition successfully through change, because we don't have time to manage resistance to change anymore. You know, those days are gone. Change is happening too quickly. So we need people to be resilient in the face of it. And you will have heard me say that before.
Yeah, sometimes you think, I know I've said that. I know I said that about 10 years ago. So you mentioned in your introduction you became an accidental author, and the book that you wrote was called Balanced Diversity. And I've got my copy here, which I'm ashamed to say is not the updated version, but tell us a little bit about the original book and kind of how you got involved with that.
Yeah, the one that you've got. So this is my dog-eared one and a very old photo on the back. So yeah, I was doing some research like about 2010 about sustainability, because I was very keen to use the IT service management framework such as ITIL to say, could we embed sustainability into our processes and make us more eco-friendly, if you like. And as a result of that, I stumbled across this research that had been done by Simon Fraser University, commissioned by the Network of Business Sustainability. And they asked Simon Fraser's Dr. Stephanie Birtles and her team to do a systematic review. And they asked the question, how do we embed sustainability into an organization and make it stick? And when I started looking at the framework that they've come up with, I was like, this isn't about sustainability. This is about any change, embedding any change. And I went through it with my service management hat on and went, yeah, absolutely. We could apply that to what we do in every change that we do. And it excited me because I was in IT, and they came up with a framework, which I think you can sort of see. And I thought, oh, IT people love frameworks. This is going to, it's going to be good. And the frameworks consists of 59 distinct practices, as they call them, or activities you can use to embed a change. And there's a particular way you have to use the framework, and that's explained in the book. So at the time, I started writing a white paper. That's how it was. And then with their permission, and I spoke to Dr. Stephanie Birtles, and she was like, yeah, just acknowledge our team and go ahead. Nothing about. She knew it wasn't going to be Harry Potter and make me make a book. And then I started to write, and I started to keep writing. And I went, oh, I think I've got a book on my hands. That's why I say accidental author. I never set out to write a book, never thought I'd be an author. And yeah, so 2011, the book was published. And as I say, it was written for the IT service management industry. It was published by ITSMF International. And of all the books ITSMF International published back then, it was the best of the bunch in terms of sales. Wasn't a great deal of active marketing, if you like, of those books. They were published by the stationery office, so enough said. They're not a marketing engine, really. Their bread and butter is government papers, isn't it, and stuff like that. But anyway, so it got quite a lot of excitement in the service management space, I think, because it was something people could relate to. And every service management practitioner said, yeah, I need something in my toolkit to help me embed the change that I'm driving. I don't have to reach out to those OCM people, even if I can find them. Probably don't exist. Give me something that I can use that it makes sense to actually embed the change that I'm driving. Like I said, whether it's a process change, a technology, roles, structure, whatever it might be. So the framework can be used for changes of any size and any size and scope.
So I was talking to somebody who works in business development recently, and I was talking about sales, and I said, what's the process? What are the steps you have to follow? And she was saying, you IT people, you're all the same. You think there's a process or a framework for everything, and it's just not like that. I mean, because OCM is, it's massive. There's huge amounts of human beings in there, and we know how tricky they can be. How easy is it to apply a framework to OCM? What's in the book that kind of nudges people along being able to do that?
I mean, I suppose, framework was probably a bad word to use, because it's not a methodology. It's not like step 1, step 2, step 3. There's a lot of things you need to do and change, and some of the methodologies that people learn as part of organizational change, to me, are so outdated, because it is very structured. And like you say, people are complex. The world is changing around us faster and faster. And we really need to get down to back to basics and say, what do we need to know? I need to know who's impacted by this change. Who are the stakeholders? What's the impact on them? And, I see, stakeholder engagement plans, like, 50 pages. And I'm like, that is going to change every week. How are you going to maintain that? We need a plan on a page.
Yeah.
And I talk about a blast radius, like you drop a bomb. These are the immediate impacted people. We need to really look after those. These are the less impacted. These are the people that are interested. And you just move people around, as things change. And you can, it's visual, display it, show it, put it online, whatever. It's plans on a page, people can see. I'm a really big fan of traffic lights. These people are ready for this change. These are nearly there, these aren't, and stuff like that. So you need to engage your stakeholders. A lot about communication, obviously, engagement, conversation, two-way channels, making sure everyone's got everything they need to be ready for when the change is going to go live. And if not, what is it they need? And that's really it in a nutshell. And we overcomplicate it. And it's, checking in. I mean, just a case. So this year I've been doing organizational change virtually for a very, very large organization based in our capital, Canberra. So you can probably guess who it is, but I won't say it. And we had one physical meeting in January with the sponsor and a few of the stakeholders, and the rest has been virtual. I have not physically met any of the team. We've been all virtual. And in a nutshell, what I did was put together a list of all the stakeholders, what messages they wanted to hear, when they wanted to hear it, how they wanted to hear it, what medium we're going to use, etc. And that changed over time, but it was basically a spreadsheet, one page. And then so we put that into place, and then on a fortnightly basis, I picked up the phone and spoke to the key stakeholders and did what I call a pulse check. How are you going? This is where we're at. This is the progress we've made, or this is what what we haven't been able to do yet. Blah blah blah. Do you have any questions? Da, 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 da. And in a nutshell, that's what I did, and it just kept everybody engaged, everybody talking. We did what I called Let's Talk session once a month, where anyone who wanted to know anything could come and talk to the project team. We talk about the progress. I talked about the OCM. We had a person talking about the technical aspects of the change, and it was open Q&A. And it was a resounding success. We just kept it really simple and just made sure everybody had avenues to ask questions, and we made sure they were addressed. It doesn't have to be, overly complex as some people make it.
I can see we've got a couple more people joining us. So just a reminder for those of you that have just joined that are watching live, if you want to ask Karen anything about OCM, pop it into the YouTube comments. We can pick it up during the conversation. But coming back to that, Karen, because it's one of the things that kind of interested me last year was that everything had to shift to virtual. And OCM is one of those areas like, product design, where we very much emphasize the communication element. Did you have to change how you worked, or was it literally just the medium that changed and the channels that changed, or did you have to change kind of the processes that you were following as well?
Really, it was just the mechanisms, to be honest. I mean, it was a challenge back in January last year when we were or February when we went into sort of lockdown here. It was like, oh my God, I've got to do this whole thing virtually.
Yeah.
And we were restricted because of the organisation I was working with, restricted on the tools on the platforms that we could use. So it wasn't a question of let's all jump on Zoom. We had to use certain tools, which was a bit of a challenge. But yeah, we needed to find those collaboration tools. We found the best repository for frequently asked questions, for training materials, made sure everybody absolutely knew where they were. So I don't think I did anything particularly different than I would have done if I'd been physically with them. I probably did more of the talking, more sort of touching base, because they never saw me physically, just to make sure, everybody felt loved, if you like. I know it sounds like a throwaway line, but yeah, everyone. And that's the feedback I got. People saying, we've never had change like this before, or OCM. I feel part of the journey. You've taken me on the journey with you. I know at every step along the way where we're at, and when we've had setbacks and when we've had progress, and I just feel a part of it. I just feel I know what's going on. And that's what most people want. They just, what's it going to mean to me? What's going on? Where are we at? When am I going to get my training? When am I going to get X, Y, Z? And yeah, we make sure it's all the ducks are lined up in a row. And then we say, are you ready? And people say yes or no. Well, if you're not ready, what else can we do?
Yeah. I love that, because I think the one thing that last year proved from a professional angle is that all these things we said, no, we absolutely can't do online. We have to be face to face. So actually went, yeah, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, one of the biggest things to me, and this is something I've been talking about for a long time, and I went, oh yeah, thank you, COVID, you proved that I'm right. I said, when you tell people why we're having to change, there's an imperative. It's about us staying in business. It's about us being ahead of the competition, whatever it might be. And you clearly articulate why, people will be on board. And COVID-19, the why was known. We need to work from home. We need to do this. We need to start using Zoom. We need to do whatever it might have been. And people didn't resist the change. They didn't go, nah, I'm not working from home. I'm staying in the office. They went. And they did it because they understood why. And often we forget that the importance of that initial conversation. We know the why. And by the time we're having the conversation, we're now in our heads talking about how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it. And people going, yeah, okay. And I often use the analogy. It's like, Claire, you're saying to me, we're going to drive to, so I'm in Melbourne. We're going to drive to Sydney tomorrow, and I'm driving. So you told me what we're going to do and how, but you haven't told me why. So why am I going to get in the car with you and drive to Sydney? A simple analogy, but yeah, that's so important. And that's what happened with COVID, which is why we, we're so successful. And like you said, we did the things we've been saying we couldn't do for years. And to me, one of the first responders was IT. I mean, IT, we know we had all the people, the health and that, but IT were tasked with get these people online and working from home so that they're safe, and did a resounding job overnight. We did digital transformation overnight.
Yeah, just a sort of a sneak preview in April. We've got some people from NHS Digital coming on the ITSM Crowd to talk about what they did in response to COVID. So I'm really looking forward to that one. But I think in terms of what happened last year, the change was so rapid, the impact was enormous, people did astonishing things. Where does OCM fit into that? Is it kind of running behind and catching up now? And how is it going to help organisations as they go into this year?
I mean, it could be in a lot of places in a bit of catch up, but OCM really is about looking after the people side of change. And I'm really passionate about, mental health in the workplace. And, I think that's got just so much lip service. It drives me crazy. And I often rant on LinkedIn and wherever when I get frustrated about, lack of people taking action. And I think that should be a part of organisational change as well, working with HR on our people and culture to make sure that we've, people can embrace this rate of change. It's not going to go slow down anytime soon. And we're going to continue to, experience disruption, and it might not be another pandemic, but it'll be something coming around the corner which we didn't see coming. We're going to go, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And we have to respond to it, and we have to adapt. And I think one of the things I'm actually writing at the moment is change management is an oxymoron. When change is so fast, uncertain, unprecedented, you can't manage it. You can't manage what you don't know is coming. And we couldn't manage the pandemic. We adapted to it and embraced it as it's happened. We have to adapt. And that's where OCM need to get people in our organizations into a situation where they accept that constant change is reality. It's what we have to do. It's what we're faced with. It's what every organization is going through, regardless of industry. And we just have to embrace it and be ready for it. So how do we get people into that situation? What resources and support do they need that they can embrace, constant change, and it doesn't stress them out, and they don't suffer with anxiety and fatigue and burnout? Because if we don't address it, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Because I think that's kind of my concern, is that there are a lot of people who spent 2020 firefighting, are coming into 2021 already burnt out. And I think OCM is part of how we move them forward and maybe bring, we can't avoid the change, but maybe bring some stability and some structure back into our organizations.
Yeah, and having those conversations about, this change is here and this is why we're having to do it, and this is why we're having to do that, and why. And people generally, I don't think people do resist change when they understand why we need to do it. Because if it's about an organization staying alive and surviving through this, then to me, the what's in it for me is my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board. Of course I am. If I want to keep my job and my salary and feed the family or whatever it might be, that's the why for me. So it's just becomes a no-brainer, and we just forget to have that conversation. We just assume people will get it. No, they won't. You need to have the conversation. Just stop assuming. And people think, I sent them an email. Well, that's not a conversation. I say that's a broadcast. That's not having a conversation with somebody about a change that's going to impact them.
Yeah, understood. So you mentioned that Balanced Diversity was written in 2011, and you've now updated it. So the updated version of the book is available. Very nice.
Look, bigger and better.
So apart from going from tabloid to broadsheet, what was the driver for the update, and what's changed in the content?
So I do like the bigger size. Some of the people who loved the first book said, "I'm glad you made it bigger because I'm getting older and it's easier to read."
This is just bigger print.
So what changed? So it's been on so as I said earlier, when I wrote the first one, it was focused on IT service management. So quite a deep but narrow application, if you like. And, hindsight is a great thing, isn't it? And for years I was saying I should have written it for any industry, because it's not defined by IT service management at all. Always could be used, but all the examples in the book were service management related. So it's been on my list for a number of years. Had a couple of false starts to start the rewrite, and then of course COVID happened, and was like, now I have a bit of time on my hands. So and that's literally what happened. I sort of resurrected the false starts and managed to rewrite it. And the main changes, so the framework in the book, and I'll send you a link, Claire, to where people can now download the framework if they want to. And the framework hasn't changed. It's exactly as the researchers put it together. I never changed it in the first edition. It's absolutely as the researchers came up with. It's brought it up to, this book's brought it into a world of digital, digital world. My world was back in 10, 11 years ago, very waterfall. So now it's adopted for, any sort of project change delivery, whether it's, agile, whatever it might be. And all the examples in the book are industry agnostic, if you like, of how to use it. So really it's its application that's changed in the book. The framework itself is exactly the same, but the narrative is now for any industry.
Mm-hmm. And do you still see, because I think one of the issues I always found in the change manager role was that kind of blurring of the lines, is this an IT change or an organisational change? And to a certain extent, most of the IT changes that we were doing also had that organisational element because of who was affected. So now we're in this digital age. Is that kind of almost merged together now?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think any change should always was an organisational change.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're changing IT or changing a bit of code, there has to be a reason for doing it. There has to be some need from somebody, or I mean, it could be, software is going to be, we have to upgrade because it's going to be out of support or whatever it is. That's still an organisational driven change, because if we don't, and it fails, we have no support for it, and the business won't be able to use this application. So it's a value. There always still has to be a value added. And I think it was just the nature of IT that we sort of, it's an IT change, and we had our bubble, didn't we? And everything we did, unplug this and plug that in, and let's just see what happens and who shouts. What does this do? I don't know. Turn it off and let's find out. But now I think that we have come of age, if you think, if that's maybe not the right term, but and we are working in the business. We're not separate to it. We are, and it's the business that's driving. I think the business is now driving the change, and IT is a trusted advisor to, you want to do, what is it you want to do, rather than we think this is what you want to do, what do you want to do, and let's work together to best deliver that. And I think that's had to happen, because when we say the business, we're still saying IT in the business, but our business colleagues, if you like, and the rest of the organization are digitally savvy. They know what potentially can be done. Looking to IT to support them in that.
Yeah. So we're coming up to the end of our time now. Tell everybody where they can get the book, where they can read more. We'll share some links if you send them to us afterwards as well. And just maybe your kind of couple of top tips to finish us up as well.
Yeah. So you can get the Balanced Diversity book, revised edition. Just double check that it says revised edition on it when you order it, because I think there's a few copies online of the old one around. So any good online bookstore, you can get it from karenferris.com. If you want a signed copy, you will foot postal fees from Australia, so it can be expensive. So I always send people to the other Booktopia, Amazon, Book Repository, etc. So that's where you get the book. Lots of resources at karenferris.com. As I said, I'll send you a link to where people can download a poster version of the framework, so they can have a little look at what's in it. And tips, really, I think, like I've said, keep it simple. Stop overcomplicating it. For anyone driving change, whether they've got the title of organisational change management practitioner, professional, whatever, we're all having to drive change. We all have to lead change. So it has to be everybody's business, but just keep it simple. Keep a plan on a page. You're going to have to change it all the time. So anything that has 3 levels of approval and sign off, you're in big trouble.
Good advice. Thank you very much. Just a word about the next episode. So we touched in today's episode about the human elements of everything that's been happening, mental health. Our next episode is on the 11th of February. So that's 3 p.m. GMT. And our guest is Helen Morris. And we've called it Love Yourself because it's nearly Valentine's Day. But really, it's going to be all about mindfulness, coping with the unexpected, coping with stress. Helen's last episode was number 76. That was really, really popular. So maybe check it out before the next one as well. But looking forward to that one. Thank you so much, Karen, for taking some time. I know it's early as well, so really, really appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who's been watching. I hope you've enjoyed that, and we will see you on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Thank you.